All right, so hello, thanks for coming to this. I know that there's 2 concurrent sessions, so everybody that's here has chosen to join this one, so thanks very much for coming. We've got 20 minutes, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop in time for some questions, and hopefully we can have a discussion at the end. And I'm going to try to post some links in chat as we go, but if I miss those, I'll do that at the end. So I'm Catriona Forrest. I'm a media practitioner. I'm a journalist and a producer, mainly in factual television, and I have over the last 4 years moved into lecturing. I'm now a lecturer in media and communications, so I'm based in the sociology department at the University of Glasgow. And my colleagues and I have designed and then developed assessments for this course, which is a 1-year master's course. And it's what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with an overview of the programme and the context in which the programme sits for you to understand the assessment and the alternative assessment model that we're using. Then I'm going to describe the formative and the summative assessments and talk a bit about the marking and the feedback. And then I'll also hopefully go into some of the pros and cons and the challenges of this assessment, which has developed over time, as you can imagine, and a little bit about the solutions that were found or that we're thinking about trying, and hopefully have some discussion about that after. So for a bit of context, the Glasgow University Media Group, or the Glasgow Media Group, is or was known for its pioneering methods of sociological research into the media, and the group was founded in the early 70s. And the current director of the group, Dr. Catherine Happer, designed this master's course, which started in 2017. So in that context, the course is a sociology-based master's degree. Students learn critical theory about the media, communications and audience theory. They learn about research methods, and they also, and in a way that's fairly unique, but becoming less so as I think there's more and more of these courses starting to appear. They learn practical journalism, storytelling skills, that's technical and editorial skills, and apply those in their assessment. And then they also reflect on their experience of doing that for their assessment. So the intention with this assessment is to give students a toolkit for working in the media or for further study, for example, sociology in the media at PhD level. And the intention for the practical assessments is to give the students some agency and to also to give them a choice of an alternative way to complete their masters. I've got a link to that, which I'll wait till after to post. So here is a graphic of the programme structure and the assessment. So the students have to do 4 core courses at 20 credits each, and that's across semesters 1 and 2. So they have to do media, communications and criticism and theory, and that's very much based on the work of the Glasgow University Media Group and their research. Catriona. Oh, thanks for seeing it.
Yeah, I don't see it. Yeah, great.
Why can I see it but you not? Why would that be?
Possibly you shared the application, not the screen.
Right. I'm going to go to screen 2. Thanks for saying. So can you now see the? Can
Yes.
you now see like a graphic of?
Yeah.
Right. I'll just carry on with this one. Thanks for saying. So yes, so they do criticism and theory, which is based on the work of the Glasgow University Media Group. Research design, which is really research methodology to enable the students that are doing master's dissertation. Researching audiences and media representations, again, that's based on the work of the media group. And then they have the choice of doing writing news or producing news, and these are 2 practical core courses. They have to do one or other of these. They do some extra optional courses, and then for their summer option to complete their masters, you can either do a dissertation, which is 60 credits, or this practical alternative assessment option, which is the practical journalism project, which I convene. You can either do a writing portfolio with a reflective report, or a video feature and a reflective report, and that all counts for 60 credits, the same as the dissertation. So it's a choice of either the dissertation or the project, and the project leads directly on from your experience of doing writing news or producing news in the top courses. So the assessments are very, very similar, but there's some nuances, obviously, to take it up to 60 credits. The students have a lot of experience of going through the same formative and summative experience in producing or writing news, and take that onto the summer work. So I can say that it wasn't me who designed it, so I can say there's some really excellent elements to the design, but as the cohort and as times have changed and facing COVID, some of the things have actually started to not work so well, and we're having to look at solutions to those issues. So what I'm going to do for simplicity is I'm going to focus on the assessments for the practical courses, particularly producing news, because the writing news assessment reflects that. So producing news, the aims of the course are here, and these are the aims that are on our official documentation for the course. It's designed to give students an introduction to practical news production skills, and teaching takes place in semester 2. So that's an 11-week semester, and it includes media law, practical skills workshops that I run, and a reading week, which we've introduced this year, where students work on their ethics submissions to a deadline. Again, that's something we've introduced this year. And the ILOs, so we use a rubric for marking, which aligns with these ILOs, these learning objectives. All of these are signposted on the course learning environment. We're using Moodle. So the students these are highlighted to students as we go along, as are the marking criteria, to more or less success. They're also in the programme handbook, and in various ways throughout the feedback sessions, we guide students towards understanding their objectives and how these relate to the marking rubric. And in the marking, grades on the rubric and written feedback is returned with a marking sheet. So in many ways, we try to tie up the ILOs with the marking as much as we can to help the students understand. So there's, for producing news, writing news is equivalent, but the assessment models are like this. There's 2 formally assessed summative assignments for this course. And the first one counts for 50% of the students' marks. So they work in a group in semester 2. They take the skills they've learned in the training, the media law and all the training we've given them, to produce a news video feature story of about 6 minutes long, maximum 6 minutes, to a brief that is delivered with the course. So the students are given this brief in week 2, and they're assigned their groups for the formative and summative assignments in week 2. So the brief is, for example, this year, the brief is to make a 6-minute news story with a social justice theme. And last year, the brief was changing lives in Britain. The summative assessment is based on various criteria, including the degree of initiative shown by the student, gaining information independently and suggesting new ideas, the effectiveness of the planning and delegation of tasks, the practical skill of the student in carrying out the delegated task, and the success of the student in fulfilling the purpose of the project. So they effectively work in a crew, which mimics the setup of a news crew. Be a producer, a director, a reporter, a coordinator, an editor, camera operator, and some people, depending on the size of the group, these tasks are shared, or it might be somebody doing more than one task. And the second formal assessment, which counts for 50% of the mark, is an individually written 2,000-word report reflecting on the practical group exercise and their experience of doing that and what that individual student has learned. And we're asking them to discuss research techniques, the sources they used, their strategy, as well as reflect on what they've learned about media practice and about group working and what it might mean to be a practitioner in this environment that they've learned to critique in their sociology masters. So formative feedback sessions are programmed into the teaching. So with week 7, we have a group progress session where the groups pitch their ideas to their class. The rest of the class all week we meet together, and there'll be a couple of the teaching staff there, and the students facilitate the students giving and receiving feedback to lesser or greater success with that. And as teaching staff, we also give feedback verbally. And week 10 is a class screening and further peer feedback with, again, some input from us, the course tutors, looking at their kind of final draft of where they are at with their work before their final summative submission, which is a week or 2 later. And they also get practical support in editing and, you know, the practical techniques before they submit. So there are, of course, challenges and issues with this. It has developed over time. We started in 2017, there was 23 students, and by last year we had 87 students, and the course was designed with a local European, you know, the usual international mix, but mainly local students in mind, really looking at a cohort of students who wanted to combine sociology with practical journalism skills and then go on to work in the media. But actually we find that the university's recruitment has changed. We've got a concentrated international market, and that actually some of the teaching and the assessment is having to be rethought about how we manage with such greater student numbers and different demographics and different needs. So the course, for many, by and large, I think the course really does provide practical news production skills, and they really do get to practice industry standard. They work to industry guidelines. For example, the risk assessment we use is one that the BBC still uses, and you know, so industry best practices really taken from our experience of working in the industry, and we also work with industry practitioners who come and do teaching. But in terms of this is about the assessment, and the combination of the reflective work gives quite a bit of scope for the students to really learn, for really think about the challenges they faced, how they solved them, and what that might mean for journalists, so that they're not just critiquing the media, they're actually feeling they have tried to do it themselves. And it's quite successful in most instances. But there are problems. For example, what about the students who aren't keen to ask for help culturally or for whatever reason? There are barriers to asking for help, and sometimes we only find out really at the last minute that a student might be struggling, especially in such a large cohort. You know, and also some students are really daunted by, for example, approaching strangers by email. You know, as a journalist, you would email people and ask them, would you be a contributor? And for some students, that's really difficult, either linguistically or culturally, to approach a stranger and say, will you work with me? Is actually quite difficult for some students. There's also problems, as we've seen in the keynote, there's problems with group work. Not everybody wants to work in a group, and the assessment on this programme, this core course that's part of the programme, the group work is an essential part of the formative assessment. So we're starting to have discussions about what an alternative could be to that. Are there ways around this for people who are unable to work in groups? And the thing is that this is based on mirroring an industry experience where students really have learned to work in a news crew. So if we remove the group work, then does it really take away the fundamental basis of the premise of this course? It'll be interesting to discuss this afterwards with you. So as a solution to that, we're running intercultural group work sessions. The University of Glasgow has a department that's student learning and development, and they're running a series of 3 sessions specifically for our programme, helping students work together in groups, and also thinking about, you know, your own values and what people might need and how to solve issues that come up in a group, and actually just putting it into the table. The group work's difficult, and giving putting that into the training formally. And this is the first year that we've made these group work sessions taking a register at them, because what we found in previous years is they were optional and students wouldn't come. I'm just going to check the chat. Oh, there's questions there. Is it all right if I answer that at the end? Still got 5 minutes. Video feature, do they need technical skills? They get taught that. And peer assessment for the group. Oh, I'll come to that at the end. But yes, the skills, all the skills they need to reach their ILOs are taught either in the video or the writing in semester 2. So quite superficial, but they really are like the jewel in the curriculum, the essential things you need to know to produce professional standard video and according to industry guidelines. We're not expecting it to be works of art or win awards, BAFTAs, Oscars, but they do get technical training.
Do you need to advance your slides?
Oh, I was answering a question in the chat, and I am going to carry on with challenges and issues, if that's all right.
Yes, I just didn't know whether we should be seeing something on the challenges and
No,
issues.
sorry. I went on a side conversation about something I saw in the chat.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
So there's questions about group work and how beneficial it is to all students and ways to get around that when we're trying to mimic industry workplace. There's also questions, as Maha was discussing in our keynote, about the burden of care. When there's some groups are performing in different ways, and some students, for example, how do we know what care, what support the students want, and how do they know how to ask for support? So during COVID, we ran lots of news cafes where students could drop in every week and speak to us, but actually over time, we don't have time, we don't have capacity to run that. So that's another discussion about the burden of care, isn't it? About students caring for each other, how to ask for support, and how do they feel that they're able to ask for support. And there's also inclusivity issues. For example, I run the practical training in this course, and what we find is that some students can't afford the software or the hardware to undertake the projects, and actually we do provide that. But I had a conversation today with a student who was not wanting to choose to do the project because he thought that he wasn't going to be able to afford the equipment. And we need to make that clear, that there is capacity to provide equipment. And often, though, this only reveals itself later. The students get an Adobe Creative Cloud license, and they can work on their own devices, but not all their devices are good enough. And we can't assume that their devices are good enough. It tends to be the same students that maybe have a part-time job, the ones that have the financial issues, and they're also the ones that can't come into our building to use our media lab. So the media lab closes in the early evening. So it's the same students that have this issue. And so to address that, what we've done is requested a small set of loan devices and laptops which have the software on it that the students would be able to borrow. And the other problem was about running extra sessions. The students who are really struggling tend to be at capacity. They're getting a lot of information. So the extra sessions tends to be the students that are already managing, that are already doing really well. Sorry, excuse me. And so the students that are really struggling don't have the capacity to come along to extra sessions. And again, that's something that I would like to hear from you about. And also, not all students are, some of the students on the course are actually just on the course to do a master's at Russell Group University. They don't really care what it is. They're not really interested in the media. And so there's a little bit of an element of in the group work. Some of these students are going to go on to do the dissertation, and they don't need these practical skills, so they might be coasting, and some of the students might feel their feedback is that some of them are pulling other students along. So that you know, there are group work is wonderful, but it's also problematic, and these are things that we're trying to find solutions for. So that's some of the solutions we've tried. We're doing training in intercultural group work. We're giving training in giving and receiving feedback. This is a fundamental part of working in the media, but also in this course, we're trying to encourage students to learn how to give each other and receive feedback, which is it's new to a lot of people. And we've also set a new formative submission deadline for this year. that they have to have their ethics completed by a certain date, and we put a reading week in there, so we're around to support in that week. Right, I think, yeah. So that's quite a big thing for this year. Is a new formative submission, that the ethics form comes to us for a deadline, because it was dragging on, and it with a bigger cohort, it became really onerous. So we're trying to manage it differently. Okay, that's me finished with my slides. Does anybody get any questions? Any questions?
Thanks, Catriona. Just opening the floor. Anybody have any questions?
There's a couple of questions in chat. So for the video feature, they do need technical skills, but they don't need to be artists. It's really things like, for example, understanding that in broadcast industry, cameras are landscape, and keeping it really simple. There's a set of technical skills they need, and they do need to learn to edit. They don't need to use Adobe Premiere. I teach in Premiere because it's impossible to teach in every piece of software available, and that make the fact that we've got access to a free student license to the Adobe Creative Cloud makes this really beneficial, because the students have the option to edit in Premiere. They don't have to, but I don't give support in other software. And peer assessment for the Dawn, you're asking about peer assessment for the group work. It's not summative. It's peer feedback for the group work in the feedback sessions that we run. Again, this is something we're trying to learn, how to give feedback that's constructive and useful and kind.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up on that one, Catriona. When you talk about the group work and assessing the group work and somebody dragging the group along, so the output of the deliverable of the group work is assessed, and the group get the same mark, correct?
Yes, although they have a sheet where they have to commit to one of the roles. So, you might decide that you were going to be the reporter, and, Eva was going to be the editor, and they put that down, and they put that in writing at the start of the semester, and in theory, they need to stick to that. And what we did in the past, we made them tell us, if you're changing roles, you need to say, because we're going to assess you on the quality of the editor, but what we found is that in certain groups, every student put their name against every role, which made it impossible to give them separate mark. It's absolutely impossible. And trying to ask the students to take ownership of one of these responsibilities has been very, very difficult. So we're going to try to find a way to address that, because yes, then otherwise everybody gets the same mark, don't they? And then, so there's generally an overall piece of feedback for the deliverable, which I would love to have shown you some of them. They're amazing, but obviously for consent issues, we've got signed consent, not because this has been recording, I couldn't show you them. But so they get a general overall mark, but it will be adapted. So if we know that one of the students was exceptionally good in a certain area, they would get a slightly elevated grade.
Are you considering things like 360 assessments, the team sort of up, down, peers? My group person was great on a scale of 1 to 5, that kind of thing.
I hadn't thought about that. That's a great idea. And I think that would work, particularly for some of the groups really function well. But what would happen then, for example, we had one group last year that imploded. They could not and would not and did not work together.
Okay.
Would they all say that they were all awful?
Well, it's tough to know how to explore that, but there must be research about that. I would think, yeah.
That's it's only, I'd say, in the last couple of years where we've had such an explosion of numbers that's happened, and then for that group, you could see it happening in seminars. We were back to face, and you could see there was something going wrong. Trying to persuade the students to speak English when they were having these discussions that were going wrong, so I could try to work out what was going on. and still don't know what happened, but the students did get a chance to resubmit, but that was problematic.
Well, but then you'd also have the beneficial effects of being in this particular group that became inspired because they worked really, really well together, so, right? So,
incredible. And yeah, there's definite benefits. And then, you know, even the students that work neutrally together, that's also the same in the workplace, isn't it? And they still do, you know, they do well.
Right.
Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions?
Thank you again for sharing.